Death Crimson OX, from Ekal and Sammy, is the latest and perhaps last light gun game for the flagging Dreamcast. Sega's own House of the Dead series has leapt to newer systems in the form of spiritual sequel Vampire Knight on the PlayStation 2 and actual sequel House of the Dead 3 on the Xbox. Thus Death Crimson is left to pick up the slack for Dreamcast-owning fans of arcade shooting games, but unfortunately, it will surely leave these poor souls wanting for more. Let's not mince words, Death Crimson OX is a House of the Dead clone. It shamelessly resembles Sega's classic shooter series in nearly every way you can think of. The once picturesque town ravaged by a horde of monsters, the kidnapped female, the sort of hard rockin' soundtrack, it's all here. The problem is, it's not nearly as good. True, House of the Dead had camp value thanks to shoddy voice acting and a goofy storyline, but Death Crimson OX is so cheesy it can't be taken seriously. The game focuses on the SMO organization and its leader, Admiral Zaza, who has kidnapped a freedom fighter named Lily. Her daughter Yuri and troubled friend Ko set out with the bafflingly ancient and mythical pistol Crimson to kill lots of monsters and eventually stop SMO. Anyone who's played a light gun game in the last 5 years will know exactly what to expect from Death Crimson OX. 1 or 2 players blast their way through a linear progression of levels, wasting enemies with abandon, sparing civilians who get in the way, and nabbing the occasional power-up item. Of course, defeating the big bad monster with the requisite weak point at the end of a level takes you through a short story sequence and on to the next killfest. Despite indications on the packaging, the game is playable with a light gun or the standard Dreamcast controller. Indeed, using a gun is the preferred method, as in the later stages, the game becomes obscenely difficult when using a controller for aiming. Death Crimson OX contains 3 gameplay modes: Story, Mission, and Bullet. The Story mode simply sends you through all the levels from beginning to end, revealing the story as you go. Mission mode lets you select any level to play and omits all story details. Finally, Bullet mode has you play the game with a finite amount of ammo. You have to finish each stage with the allotted number of bullets. Extra modes are always a nice gesture, but after the main game is played through a couple of times, these don't really add enough meat to keep the replay value high. It's hard to recommend Death Crimson OX to anyone but the truly desperate light gun fanatic. It offers nothing new to the genre, and frankly, it's surpassed by older light gun games. Death Crimson OX is a light gun shooting game developed by Ekal. It was released in arcades in 2000 and ported to the Dreamcast console in 2001, published by Sammy Entertainment, several months after Sega had dropped support for the console. It is the 3rd game in the Death Crimson series, and the only one to be released outside Japan. The game was also released as Guncom 2 in Europe and Death Crimson OX in Japan on the PlayStation 2. The Dreamcast version received generally unfavorable reviews, according to the review aggregation website Metacritic. GameSpot described it as a second-rate House of the Dead clone. IGN cited a confusing storyline, poor visuals, and new gameplay mechanics which prevent the game from offering any sort of challenge. Game Informer said that it gives you plenty of targets, but no real reason to keep pulling the trigger. Eric Bratcher of NextGen called it a typical gun game with typical gun game problems. It's too short, too redundant, and too similar to everything else out there. Only the NRA would lobby for this one. In Japan, Famitsu gave it a score of 25 out of 40. Also in Japan, Game Machine listed the arcade version in their January 1, 2001 issue as the 13th most popular dedicated arcade game of the year 2000.